Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're with us wherever you happen to be. Hope you're having a good day. Our person that we get to chat with today is Dr. Stephanie Gutnik, doctor no less. We'll have to find out about that. But she is here from Toronto, where right now it's pretty cold because we're recording this on the 30th of January, so it's cold where she is. It's not quite as cold where I live in Victorville, California, but we're doing okay and we'll cope. So Dr. Gutnik is the president of Tuxedo Concepts, and I'm not going to go into any detail about it because I want to leave all that for her. So we'll just do it this way. Stephanie, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're here.
I am so glad to be here. Thank you.
Why don't you tell us a little about maybe the early Stephanie growing up and all that? Let's start with that.
All right. The early Stephanie grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is even colder than Toronto is at this time. So I'm definitely used to snow and negative temperatures. And I had a wonderful, wonderful upbringing. To be in the prairies, you get perspective on a lot in life. And was very close with family, friends, and then very quickly I wanted to discover more of the world. So I left to study at McGill for undergrad, and it's in Montreal in Canada. And my life took shape around that. I traveled the world. I continued my academic pursuits and certainly climbed my way up in the business world as well.
How did travel to various places sort of shape your outlook on things?
I've always had the travel bug. Growing up, we would go away to different parts of the States and some warmer destinations with the family, road trips as well. And then as I got older, it was Europe, it was Australia, and I was always very happy to travel alone or with groups of people that I met for the first time. And I was just really curious to see what life was like in other places. Mm-hmm. And that translated very nicely into my working reality, where I was largely in marketing and business development throughout my career. And I was with companies at first that were rapidly expanding internationally. So I was able to open an office in China and set a business plan for hiring in the Middle East, and go to South America and speak and grow the business. So I'm really grateful because when I meet people now, typically wherever they're from, I can, pick my favorite food that I ate while I was there, and we have something to smile about and talk about.
That's pretty cool. Well, I haven't traveled as much as you have, but I've traveled enough. I enjoy travel. I enjoy going to different places and meeting people and experiencing different customs. And even around the United States, there's so many diverse and different kinds of environments. It's pretty fascinating.
Very much. Do you have a favorite place in the U.S.?
Oh, it's still going to be California because the weather's better.
I hear you.
My favorite place is probably in the San Diego area because I think it's still the best weather anywhere. It's a temperate climate. It's a good climate. It doesn't really get cold to freezing very often, although it can in the winter, but it warms right up during the day. So I really like San Diego. We enjoyed, my wife and I, living in the San Francisco area. We lived in a town called Novato, which is in the North Bay of the San Francisco area. We lived there for 12 years. And I enjoyed that too, but San Diego still has the best weather.
The air in La Jolla is delicious.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the whole point. La Jolla is such a nice place, and it's northern San Diego County, and you've got the beach, and you've got the university there, and so many other things that make it a nice place.
Very true.
Now I live in Victorville, which is kind of up on the high desert of California, so it's not exactly the same. And I never thought I would live here, but we moved here because it was the only property in Southern California when we wanted to move down to be closer to family. It was the only property or place where we found property where we could build a home. And we wanted to build a home because my wife was in a wheelchair her whole life. So we wanted to build an accessible home. And that's what we did. So we've been here now. I've been here for, well, we moved down in July of 2014. So my gosh, it's going to be 12 years in 5 months.
Isn't it? It's funny that you say that because I always find in life there are just, you find yourself in circumstances that you did not plan. And then they become rather permanent and you can't really envision your life without that place or that circumstance.
I hear you. I agree. And well,
Yeah.
and this house is very comfortable. I like it. My wife unfortunately passed away in November of 2022. So it's me, a dog, and a cat, but I enjoy it. And, I'm perfectly happy here. I said I never thought I would live in Victorville, but that's okay. That is where I am, and the house is wonderful. So I'm fine with it. If I had one thing to say about Victorville, it is the drivers up here all think they own the road, and they're, as far as I'm concerned, I ought to be able to get a driver's license because I could drive as well as a lot of the people up here. I don't see the problem myself. But
Up until recently, I hadn't driven a car in like at least 12 years, just from living, in more cosmopolitan cities and really enjoying a good walk.
yeah,
Yeah.
but you drive
So,
now
no, I've just been behind the wheel to break that
just to get into the
stretch.
habit. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Well,
But
and Toronto, you can certainly get around Toronto without a lot of grief.
totally. Yeah. I very much value the ability to live somewhere where you can just run out and pick something up to eat or, see people around you. I think it's important. Certainly it feeds me.
Yeah. So, and I am really, for the most part, enjoyed living in New Jersey and working in New York City. New York City is a great place to be able to get around. It's pretty easy to travel anywhere in the city, subways and all that. Now, it wasn't as easy for my wife because she was in a wheelchair her whole life, and a lot of subway stations
Right.
and so on aren't accessible. But one day, and it was actually before we moved back there, we were in the city, and my wife wanted to go see the UN. And it turns out that she could go downstairs in the hotel where we were staying, and I was doing other work, but she was able to get a bus that took her right to where the UN was. She could wheel across the street and take a tour of the United Nations and so on, and then take the bus back home because everything was accessible. So she was really excited about having had the opportunity to do that.
I love that.
Yeah, it's
I
a
was
great
at,
story.
it really is. And it's important. I was at Yahoo for a couple of years, running a division there globally. And when I started, it was part of Verizon Media, or
Yeah,
was Verizon Media, part of Verizon. And the work that groups were doing on accessible features in technology really intrigued me. And you kind of think there should be an element of that at every company producing whatever it is that they're doing, because it makes such a difference.
well, when you think about it in terms of, let's say in the US, for example, the Center for Disease Control says that up to 25% of all people have a disability. Now, I disagree with that, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But they say 25% have a disability. And so often, companies don't deal with that. They're leaving out 25% of their prospective customers because they don't want to make things accessible. And there is so much evidence to show that companies that do create accessibility get the brand loyalty and they get the business.
Yeah.
The reason I object to 25% is my belief is everybody has a disability. For most of you, it's light dependence. You all don't do well when the lights go out, unless you happen to have a smartphone or a flashlight or whatever. So I describe disability as a characteristic that everyone has. It's just that it manifests itself differently for different people. But that's my view on it. And one of these days we'll get more of society to recognize that there is a lot more that they need to do to deal with preventing this whole business of leaving so many people out.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with you, by the way. And there's also, call it disability or whatever you want. Everybody has something in their
Yeah.
life that, it either doesn't make it as easy or makes it their own. And so the whole point of, when you talk about a customer base, really just interacting as humans, it's how do we how do we understand that everybody is dealing with,
Yeah.
one thing, and what can we do? And um, you know, throughout my working career, I was somebody who, like, despite being born in Winnipeg, I should have been born in Manhattan because my work ethic is one where I'll work day and night and be very happy about it. I walk quickly, I get things done quickly, and so it was, if you give me a challenge, I'll do anything
Mm-hmm.
to, fulfill it. And I think what I've seen with myself and amongst others in my network is that type of personality begets a whole slew of other issues: burnout, health issues, stress. And so, one thing that I developed and have started to take on the road, I know you're a public speaker, I am as well. I call it the wellness workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, get up at 5 in the morning and do your yoga and then your 30-minute meditation and then your 5K run. Or it really is much more tangible, and certain tips and tricks that we can do when we're on an airplane or, in a hotel, or just in a period where we're feeling overwhelmed. And I really believe that we all have to be cognizant of what's going on with each other in the workplace and just in general, and be able to offer some of these guidelines to just help everyone, be okay, if you will.
One of the things that I have adopted as a pretty hard line way of living is when I'm flying to travel and speak, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to work on the airplane going or coming.
Mm-hmm.
Rather, I'll use that time to sort of mentally prepare, because when I get off the airplane at a destination, I know I'm on until I get off, until I fly out again. There are going to be
Right.
people who want my attention and all that. So I use that time to relax. And then when I leave, again, I don't want to work. I want to be able to kind of unwind. So I like to read and do things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I use those airplane flights basically as a time to unplug.
Yeah. And see, you're being mindful of the space that you need to let yourself unwind and be that much more productive, and have your battery recharged when you're landed. I think
And
that's
I
smart.
think more people should do that. And there's so many different kinds of things that we can do. We collectively as a society tend not to be overly introspective. We don't think about things. So something doesn't go right, we consider it a failure. We worry about it. We fret about it. But what we don't do is listen to our own inner voice, and we don't analyze, well, so what was the real problem here? What am I afraid of? What can I do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? We don't ask ourselves those questions.
Oh, wow. I kind of needed to hear that actually today. So thank you for bringing that up. You're very right.
Is that because you haven't figured out why you live in the snow? Just
I'm
checking.
working on that.
There you are. Yeah,
The cold is actually very good for our vagus nerves. So,
yeah. Well, it gets fairly cool here at night.
yes.
It was down to 27 degrees, so it was like -2 or -3 Celsius a
Hmm.
couple of weeks ago here, and but I can keep pretty warm, and when I'm sleeping at night, my cat sleeps right up next to me. She does it because it keeps her warm, but it helps keep me warm too. So I'm not complaining.
There you go.
But
Yeah.
I do
Minus
think,
minus two, by the way. That's beach weather.
yeah, yeah. Well, there you are. Yeah, fine. You go to the beach then.
Hmm.
But I think that we we really do need to collectively and individually think about the need to unplug, to not just always do every single thing and that the same way. And then when there's a problem, we don't take time to think about it, which is a real problem.
Mm. There's also the concept of, I don't know if we're raised with this or if at some point we think this is what happens in society, but to think that our lives are almost like a staircase and that the older we get, the further up the staircase we should be going, is quite a fallacy
Yeah.
because again, it's just not how it works. Sometimes things stay flat. Sometimes you're going to go down a few steps. And, this is called, we're all about the unstoppable mindset here, right? So it really is, if you're falling down a few stairs, what do you do to get back up? I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you have to really look for that answer, which is the issue.
Mm, yeah.
So
Do you,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, is that something that people can learn? Or
Sure.
is it something that is ingrained in you from a younger age?
Well, I think that for some people it may be, and then I think, but it is a matter of life. It is a matter of upbringing. I think it is something that people can learn. So during the pandemic, I wrote my book, Live Like a Guide Dog, True Stories from a Blind
Mm,
Person and his dogs about being brave, overcoming adversity, and moving forward in faith. And what I talk about through as a basic premise of the book is that in reality, we can learn to control fear. I will not say we should never say we're not afraid. We should never say that, oh, I don't ever experience fear. We do experience fear, and it's evidenced in so many ways. But you can either allow fear to overwhelm you and as I would put it, blind you, or you
mm,
can learn to control fear. You can learn that fear can be a very powerful tool to help you. And my evidence of that is that I learned so much prior to September 11th about what to do in emergency and other things like that. And all of that clicked in on September 11th. But I realized during the beginning of the pandemic that I'd never taught other people to do the kinds of things that I do and that
mm.
I still tend to do. And so I wrote Live Like a Guide Dog to try to teach people by using examples that I learned from my 8 guide dogs and my wife's service dog about how to live. So the example I use most often is people what if everything to death. Well, what if this
Mm,
happens? What if that happens? What if this? What if that? And the reality is 95% of that we have no control over, and all we do is create fear and worry because we keep going what if about this and there's nothing we can do about it.
right.
Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be aware of things, but we don't have to worry about them. We don't have to focus on all the stuff over which we have no control. Dogs don't what if anything. And I learned that
Mm,
because on September 11th, when we got home, I was going to take my guide dog Roselle out. I took the harness off and she ran off and grabbed her favorite tug toy and started playing tug of war with my retired guide dog Linny. And when I talked to the
mm,
people, the veterinarians at Guide Dogs for the Blind, where I got Roselle, I talked to them the next day. They said, well, did anything threaten her at the World Trade Center? And I said, no. And they said, there's your answer. When the harness came off, it was over for her. They don't what if, and we should learn that.
right. And she wasn't processing what just happened. She just moved on.
She moved on,
Yeah.
you know, um, and people still today fear it, and they worry about so many things. As I said, the fact is we should be aware, but it doesn't mean that we have to worry about, especially if we don't have control over it.
Mm,
I rented office space in the World Trade Center in late 1999, early 2000, and I was able to get office space because there had been a bombing in the World Trade Center in 1993. And it wasn't much of a bombing. It was an explosion in a parking lot on the fourth sub level of the World Trade Center. So it wasn't,
nonetheless.
yeah, it wasn't a big thing, but the occupancy rate by the time I was looking for office space had dropped to 80%.
Mm,
And why? If something were to happen, something would happen. But people worried about it, and so many people left the World Trade Center, and I thank them for doing that because I got a great rate and we rented office space there, so fine. But the fact of the matter is that we worry about so many things over which we just don't have control.
Right. So you're a bit of a risk taker too, in that sense.
Well, in a sense, but so there was a bomb that
Mm-hmm.
a car, something exploded, and I understand that, but was it a true risk to go off and rent space in that building and that complex afterward? Well, is there risk in doing it today with the new complex? The
Right.
fact of the matter is that there are always going to be things that can happen. The question is it really taking a risk, or are you being silly and putting yourself in harm's way? I won't do that if I can avoid it,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna be out there and try to live my life and help others do the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the biggest thing, not living in fear of so many different variables.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you went to McGill and you graduated with what, degrees in business or what?
No, I
Oh,
graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and
okay.
Communications. So I
Okay.
went to McGill thinking that I was going to become a broadcast journalist. I loved the idea of being on camera and in the heat of something going on. And uh, I've been told that I ask a lot of questions, and it comes naturally. I'm very curious. So I love speaking to people and getting their opinions on various things. And then bringing that all together for what hopefully is a representative story of multiple truths, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still like that to this day. So everything, if I had, strength, it would be how do I compile a lot of information and then kind of organize it to cut certain things out and really get at the crux of whatever it is that we're dealing with. So I loved that. I still do. I had an internship at CTV Montreal. So it was a big news station
Mm-hmm.
nationally in Canada. And you know what? It was one of those things where I just didn't feel like a fit for me at that time. And so again, it's what do you do after? Well, I was entering my last year of undergrad, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll just go do a master's because I've always loved school. Um, and instead, I got the advice just go out there and pick something and work a little bit and figure out, what it is that you want to do from there. I graduated a year early, so I was 21. It is hard to know you want to do, right? I think a lot of young people find themselves in that position. And instead of, I guess, going back to the idea of fear, instead of being paralyzed by it and not doing anything, just do something. And
Yeah.
at least it puts you on some sort of path.
So what did
So
you do?
I got lucky. I ended up working for News Corp in Montreal for a couple of years in advertising sales. And that introduced me to the world of advertising. It helped me refine sales, efforts and skills. And I think that understanding how sales work, whatever you do in your life, that's going to come in handy, right? So I was doing that, and I was dealing with agencies and marketers for various different brands, like L'Oreal, for example, Danone, and I liked what they were doing. So then that led me to a job in marketing for a software company. And that's the story is marketing turned into business development and partnerships and launching a new tech effort and expanding with that company across the world. And I was able to lean into a lot of writing and speaking. And that's how my career evolved. And I did my MBA while I was working for that company. So there were lots of studying during plane rides. So not
Wow.
quite the unwinding, but it was definitely a break from the actual work.
Well, that's fine. And
Hmm.
you you've done a lot with it. So you got your master's degree. Where did you get that from?
That was from Edinburgh Business School. So I did that remotely because I was traveling a lot and I had a lot of business in the UK. So it made sense to do something around there. And again, from there, I was recruited I built a lot of my own positions while I was at this company, always going, oh, this isn't being dealt with. Why don't I take a stab at it and see what happens? Oh, there's a gap here. Let me figure that out. Even, the Middle East is one that I like talking about because at the time we were not doing any business there. And I had a hunch that I was like, look at all the research. We should be there. We should have a sales rep at least. And the CEO at the time said, no, it's not really, I don't agree. So we made a deal for a small amount of money. I was able to figure out my trip and see if I could make a business plan. And so I took a flight from Montreal that had 2 stops to get there, lost my luggage. But, and I know, but on the way back, I mean, long story short, the company now has a thriving business in that region. And while I was there, maybe there's a certain age at which you don't know any better. But I think I've always had this and always will, is I was raised to understand that if you don't ask, either you don't get or you won't know. So I reached out to the editor of Golf News, which is their biggest paper there. And I said, hey, I'm here growing a business in this industry. Can I write an article for you? And he said yes. And it was published. And so stories like that it kind of defines my life. I always like to figure out what else I could do and learn from it, push the envelope a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes you have to take a stand. Sometimes you have to develop your own mental toughness. And when people disagree, you unless they can really present some strong argument, then you really just need to push forward. And clearly that's what you did.
Yeah, and look, sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong, and that's a learning experience in itself, and that's part of being humbled. And I think that's equally as important.
Yeah. And it's all part of the adventure of life.
So
What
true.
what made you decide to get a doctorate?
So after the MBA, again, I love school and I figured, why not just keep going? And I was moving to New York, and it was my mom who said, you know what, Steph, like I think I was 26. She goes, just enjoy your life a little bit. and she wasn't wrong. So I took a few years. And after that, it was still at the back of my mind. I still really wanted to continue and take my education as far as I could. So I thought long and hard about what I would want to study for that kind of time. And, it's not going to change the world, but I studied the advertising effects of mass media and ones that have been changing as a result of, the whole media landscape has been digitized. So that's what I did. And actually, the brand that I worked with for my research is a company out of California called Gooder. So they make sunglasses, and I worked with their marketing team, and it was just a wonderful experience. And again, it's a different way of thinking. By that point, I was very much an executive, and I had been at private and public companies. And going back to school in that sense and learning, in the business world, everything is about being concise, which I think is a very powerful skill to have. And in academia, you slow things down and you really look at the whole picture, plus all of the small details that build it. So I'm an impatient person, and that definitely took some work, but I loved the whole process. It wasn't easy, but I'm very happy that I did it.
So when did you get your PhD?
I graduated, I want to say 2 odd years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
Congratulations. Well, that's cool.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Yes.
how do you think that AI is affecting the world of media, the world of public relations and marketing and so on?
So, despite working in ad tech, I myself am quite a Luddite. I'm very removed. I don't have too much social media, and usually with technology, unless it really benefits me, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be an early adopter, if you will. So with AI, I appreciate, the code and so on that it's built on, all of the knowledge behind it and how it works. And I definitely think there's so many realms in which it's going to help us advance as a society. And I think that with advertising and marketing and media, AI helps take out there's something that preceded it in terms of media buying called programmatic that I've spent a lot of my career dedicated to. And programmatic just really automated media buying and selling, made it a little bit easier than picking up the phone and calling 24 different vendors to put a campaign together. And so with AI, it does that even more so. It just takes out a lot of the more tedious and redundant work from media planners to strategists and helps us understand a little bit better how marketing dollars are actually put to work and how effective they are in terms of the results that we see. But here's the thing, is as much as AI is going to simplify certain processes, we, at the end of the day, are human beings. And the reason why, as far as I know, nobody's really mastered the stock market yet is because we're driven by emotion and we're fickle and think it takes a lot for a machine to understand how we think and how we work. And so the same thing applies to advertising, because for an ad to be effective, it has to strike a chord with humans somehow. So I think that by nature of us being human, the world of advertising will still have media departments and creative teams and have to continue to think about, the strategy behind what it is that we're doing.
How about social media?
What would you say?
Well, I think there's a lot of truth to all of that. I think that AI is a tool, and different people will use it in different ways. And I'm not going to even go to the negative aspects of it, because the reality is most anything that we create, somebody will find a way to misuse it. And I can't worry about that. But I do see the value of AI and the AI technology in terms of how it can help us codify or create different kinds of aspects of whether it's marketing or anything else. AI can assist us, but it is a tool, and we're still the humans, and we're going to be the ones that will be in control. I'm not ready to accept that it can take over in the end. I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm still not even thinking about it.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of ways that we can use it. AI has done already a number of really good things for us collectively. And I think that's great. That doesn't mean that we're all going to use it, or that doesn't mean that we'll all use it extremely, in an extremely productive way all the time. But it is out there, and I think it's one of those things that's worth learning about and understanding, because it's going to be here. It's not going away.
Right.
How about social media? That's the other one. That's become even more pervasive.
And social media, again, just by nature of who I am not big on it, and it's not knocking it. I just know that it's not something that I want to have in my life to the extent that some others do want it in theirs. I'm really good with just doing my own thing and focusing on my little bubble in terms of, the restaurants that I choose to go to and what food I'm eating and all of that. And with the people who are in my life, I love hearing from them directly and getting updates and seeing their pictures. So I use LinkedIn for business. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful platform to build a profile and interact with people in your world that way. And I think that there's a lot of people doing the same with other platforms. And so when I look at social media from a business perspective, I think it's amazing. And when I look at it from a personal perspective, again, it's not for me, but I think if people enjoy being on it, that's totally up to them. I just don't really have the patience I'd rather do something else. I'd rather work on, either my full-time job or my business is on the side, or go for a walk, quite frankly.
Well, I think again, I'm kind of with you. I think that, especially personally speaking, people who spend hours a day on social media are missing out on so many other kinds of things that would be even better. And a lot of that has to do with personal contact with other people.
Right.
which you don't have, no matter what people may say, you don't have when you're just dealing with communicating through social media. That's not the same.
Hmm. It's true.
And
Plus,
and it
there's the
won't be.
element. Oh, yeah. And I think people feel pressure. And we see this, it goes both ways, but I do think there's a bit of a pressure to put your best foot forward in a social media environment, right? Whether it's Photoshop or editing or posing for, a lovely photo when you're not doing great, whatever it might be. And I think that's slowly changing. But for me, it's more, I think we're all just trying to do our best. And I don't, it just doesn't work for me on a personal level.
Yeah, I think we should try to be doing our best all the time anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. We should, well, that actually leads me to this is I'm going to go for it. This is a plug. I wrote a book called My Very Best for that
And
reason,
I
actually.
was going to talk to you about that. Yeah, go ahead.
So you know exactly what you're
And
doing. Yeah.
and by the way, I would appreciate it because I don't think that you did. Send me a picture of the book cover that we can put in the notes, the show
I
notes.
did, and I will follow up with that again. Thank you so much. It's that was something that I've always wanted to do. When I was younger, my mom tells me about how I used to bring a stack of books over to her to read to me. And I definitely have fond memories of reading books to my sister, who's younger than me. And I've always just loved children's books because they're so beautiful in their simplicity and the
Hmm.
way that they can frame a young mind into being curious and imagining and learning so much about the world. And so I wanted to definitely write a book about the values that my sister and I were raised with. She told me that she was having her first child about a year ago at this time. And so in that time frame, I was like, this is the moment. This is when I have to write a book. And so I wrote it for him and my nephew. And it was one thing where I started with writing out the copy, and then I needed to get it illustrated. And then from
Hmm.
there I was like, you know what, I've done all this work. Let me publish it. And so it was a big learning experience and so much fun. And I've had readings and I just went to go see it on the shelf at Canada's biggest bookstore called Indigo. And I'm so thrilled. So I wrote it because my parents they raised my sister and I to really understand that it's not about being the best. It's about giving something your best effort because that way, if you do well, great, you worked really hard to get there. And if you
Yeah,
don't do well, you're not going to be wondering, if I only had tried more, because then you're disappointed with yourself. So
yeah.
it's about setting yourself up to always be proud of who you are. And that's really important to me.
Are there any books, other books inside of you that may come on in the future?
Oh, well, that one I'm loving right now. If we consider my thesis, my doctoral thesis, a book, that one will put you to sleep because it's long and quite
Yeah, many
academic.
theses
Yeah,
will do that.
yeah, and I think I quite like. I can see moving forward the more journalistic style articles. So maybe there are a few of those. That address very specific moments or questions. Maybe we'll see some of those come out.
One of
And
the
what about you? Given that you're a New York Times bestseller, do you have anything up your sleeve?
Not at the moment, but we'll see down the line. But one of the things that I believe is, and I've roused about this even on the podcast a few times. I think that textbooks are so boring, and they
Mm,
shouldn't be. I think that every textbook that someone writes ought to have some personal things in it to help draw readers into being more excited about learning more about what's in the textbook. So a physics book is real lovely, but it's very boring. Why don't the physicists, the scientists who create those books, put in as part of what they do some stories about their efforts, some stories about the discoveries they've made
mm,
to really make the books more personal and to draw people in. Publishers don't want that, but the reality is it would really attract, I think, a lot more interest in textbook material. And the same thing with technical journals and technical manuals. They're so boring, and there's so much more that could be done with them. I think that would attract people much more than they do today.
There's something about humanizing and adding a little bit of maybe even imperfection, dare I say, like, hey, this is what happened, and let's be real about the situation. That, yeah, makes it more entertaining for sure.
Yeah, yeah, which I think makes perfect sense. And it would be, I think, a wonderful thing to do. Well, maybe we'll have to start a new publishing company and insist that the people who write books for our company do that. Yeah, something to think
Yeah,
about. I
I'm with
knew
you. We
never.
can offline on that.
Yeah, ought to be able to do something with it. Well, so anyway, for you, so you wrote the children's book, um, and it's out there. Did you self-publish it, or was it published by a company?
Yeah, I went through a company based in New Jersey, and they just had the perfect platform and distribution for me. And it really, I would say, around the time that I was 35, which is now, but when I turned that age, I really started thinking about, like, you know, okay, our life doesn't have to be cut and paste, and there really is
Mm-hmm.
no manual. And I had thought that for most of it. I would
Mm-hmm.
look at people that I admire or respect, or people around me, and look at them, evaluate the milestones that they had reached by specific ages. And then I'd look at myself, and, sometimes I was exceeding those milestones, in my opinion. Like I worked my way up the corporate ladder very
Mm-hmm.
quickly, but there were other ways in which, at the time, I thought I was lagging, or dare I say, failing, because certain other elements of my life weren't where other people's were, or I thought it should be. So I've been going through a process, really, of letting that go, and
Yeah.
again, just to your going full circle to what you said earlier, just being a bit more introspective and appreciating that we're all, again, trying to just do our best here, and nobody's journey is going to look the same. So
Right.
with that has just come, I've always wanted to try new things, but it always is, I'll wake up in the morning and go, like, what do I want to do today? Who should I reach out to see if there's some way to collaborate or have a new experience? And it's just made for really fun travels and stories, and successes, and learning experiences. And I'm working on that. I can say that as much as I want, and I think, you know it's really believing it that is a bit more of an effort.
Well, there you go. And it'll be interesting to see how it all comes out as you go forward.
Yeah. Did you have that at all throughout yours? As periods of like plateaus?
I think probably so, but I don't think that I really ever thought that I was failing. There were times
Mm.
that things were not happening the way I would like, and usually what I needed to do was to make an adjustment in my attitude, to understand why things were going slower or not the way I expected. And sometimes they weren't going the way I expected because I had the wrong expectations. And
Oh.
again, I love introspection, and those are things that I learned along the way. And I also discovered that when I reevaluated and said, oh, well, maybe this really wasn't the right way to do this. Let's look at this.
Mm.
I think that's an important thing to do. Be- but I usually find, and I still do, that if something's not working right, usually my inner voice, if you will tell me what is good, what's working, what's not working, what should be done. And I have to be the one to pay attention to that. And if I don't, then I can get into trouble.
It's amazing how much our gut instincts
Hmm.
really know what's best for us in certain situations, and how sometimes it takes a minute for our brain to get there too.
Yeah. Now, are you a spiritual person at all?
Oh, totally. Another good segue. Yes, I believe
There
in
you
the
go.
scientific method, obviously. so so that's that. But I am comforted by the idea that there's a lot more to what we're doing here than what
Hmm.
is commonly accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely true. And that gets back to my comment about the inner voice, which is if you want to say God talking to us or however you want to view it, it doesn't matter. The point is that I think the information is there if we learn to listen and accept it.
Mm.
Our own minds absorb so many things that we tend to forget about, but all that information is there for us to use if we would but tap into it
Yeah.
or
That's
allow
a
it, or when it tries to tap us on the shoulder and say do it this way, we need to learn to listen.
Ooh, and that's a great point too, is for people who are used to propelling, things forward. And you had mentioned what's out of our control. That's another really important word that I speak about in wellness and has been given to me. Yeah, do I see a psychic? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I often get the word surrender because again, sometimes it's being able to accept. And I do a little bit of Kabbalah in terms of reading and learning about how that works. And the term actually means to receive. So when we look at what we're doing here again, I think you want to put out some energy to put things in motion, and then there's a point where you just have to let life come to you.
Well, and I think also it's so helpful at night to when falling asleep even you want to do something, um, ask yourself, what do you think about this? Should I do this?
Mm,
Give me guidance and give me insight as to what works. The more of that we do, the more we develop our mind muscle to be able to get the information and process it and do something with it. And that will help us. But it has to be a discipline that we create and develop to really work on getting that information and seeking it every day and listening to what our minds are telling us. I people probably will get bored with this because I say it often on the podcast, but I talk about Trivial Pursuit, the game.
mm,
How often do we get a question asked on a game, Trivial Pursuit, and we immediately think of an answer and we go, oh, that was just too easy. That can't be it. And we think a little bit more about other options and we choose a different option. But the first one that we thought about was really the right answer.
yes.
Exactly. And the point is that and people agree. Now, what do we do about it? Well, we learn to listen to that inner voice.
The same thing happens with students, by the way, on exams. Multiple
Hmm.
choice is not always that easy because so many students have the tendency to second guess themselves.
Yeah,
And it's usually that their first instinct was the right answer.
right.
Yeah.
If they would just but listen and learn, they'll get the right answer by doing that. And the reality is that I think there are some studies that have been done that people that truly do learn to listen and take those first answers and use them tend to be right a whole lot more often than they otherwise would have been.
Mm, yeah. Again, trusting our instincts.
Right.
Yeah.
So what kind of projects are you working on now?
Oh, well, again, I'm an EVP at an ad agency, so that's my full-time project. But then I
EDP?
always EVP, Executive Vice President.
Oh, EVP. Okay, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. VP.
So
Okay, got it.
yeah, with an E, if we're
Yeah.
if we're looking at so that keeps me very busy. And then on the side, again, I think it's very important to have an identity outside of work. And this is
Hmm.
something that I actually had to learn because for a while there, my job title and so on was my whole life. And um, you can have hobbies and so on the side. For me, it has to be more constructive than that. So the other things that I have on the go is I have my company Tuxedo Concepts, where I do all different types of consulting work. I have clients across the world, in the world of media through to a private equity fund called Links Equity, and I'm actually working on a protein superfood snack right now called
Ooh.
Balance Bites. So that's another, I'm snacking all the time and I have a massive sweet tooth. So usually I'm going for like the brownies and the cookies. And I work with the founder of this brand, and they're packed with a lot of nutrients that give me a lot more energy throughout the day. So that is something that I definitely want to bring to more people.
Ooh, that's exciting.
It aligns very nicely with
Hmm.
this whole wellness kick that I'm trying to bring to others, but not in the lifestyle that's impractical to some people or makes them, not even want to think about it. More so, again, with those ideas of if you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious, splash some cold water on your face, right? Like there's
Yeah.
certain tips like that you don't have to go to a yoga studio or sign up for a gym membership, though, you should be exploring physical activity. It's what are small things that we can be doing for ourselves to bring us back into the moment.
Do you think there are things in your life that you're not doing that you should be doing, or that you miss?
Oh, on a personal level, I feel, yeah, at this age that probably from a family perspective, I should be getting on that. But that is one of those things that is so out of our control. And I find that in those instances, just it's very easy to look at what we don't have
Mm-hmm.
and yearn for it. Um, but that can be depressing. So
Well,
instead, it's much more fulfilling to look at what we do have and lean into that, right?
yeah, I know that when my wife and I got married, we both pretty much thought we knew what we wanted in a partner,
Mm,
and we kept looking until we found it. We found each other, and that worked. But
beautiful.
I was 32 and she was 33, so we didn't get married right away. But the other side of it is we met in January of 1982 and we got married in November of 1982 because
Oh,
it
wow.
clicked. We knew what we wanted, and we saw things in so many ways exactly the same. But there were also times that we disagreed with things, but you communicate, you work through it.
Right.
So, for example, she didn't want to have children because she felt that that would be kind of hard on her body, being in a
Uh,
chair in her case. And I was fine with that. But our solution to that was we'll be glad to entertain nieces and nephews and things like that because at the end of the day, we can either sell them to the gypsies or send them home.
and that's beautiful, right? You still have such a wonderful
Yeah.
impact on other people. And that's a thank you for sharing that.
And
What? Oh,
one of our nieces lives about 3 miles from me, and we see each other all the time. She and her husband, and now their kids are grown and have kids of their own, so we get to see everybody.
that is lovely. What about you? Are there any things that you still have on your bucket list that you'd like to be doing right now?
Well, I certainly want to do more speaking because I want to keep that going. I'd like
Hmm.
to travel more, but it's not nearly as fun for me, at least, traveling alone. But one of these years, certainly in the next 2 or so years, I'll probably decide to take a cruise because I love cruising,
Oh, me
and
too.
I can do really fine cruising. I think that's a lot of fun to do.
Definitely. Which part of the world would you cruise in?
I'm pretty open on that. I first of all, I've been to New Zealand. I'd love to go to Australia, but as far as
Hmm.
cruising, I'm pretty open. Um, I'd like to do a cruise up and down the Mississippi River, but I'd like to do some cruising around Europe or other places as well. I think it'd be fun.
Yes, I very much agree. My family went on, I was very fortunate. We did 4 cruises together, my parents, sister, and I, all over the Caribbean and Mexico. And then I did one in South America, and I've done one in Greece and Turkey. And I also I took a catamaran with about a dozen strangers in Thailand for almost
Ooh,
2 weeks. Yes, that
well,
because why not?
we first cruise that we took, Karen was a travel agent at the time, actually, and her family wanted to go on a cruise. We did a 2 week Trans Panama Canal cruise. That was a lot
Wow.
of fun. Loved it. Then we did a cruise to Mexico, and I think we did another cruise in the Caribbean. And then the last cruise we took was to Alaska, which was a lot of fun.
Okay, that is wonderful.
Yeah.
Was
But
there
I'd
anything
like
in Alaska that surprised you?
nothing that surprised me. It was just fun to go for me and Karen actually. Um, although it's fun to get off and tour, we're fine if we're just on the ship the whole time, even just because
Right.
it's relaxing, it's the attitude and having fun. But I would like to go and cruise some. I think we'll do that sometime in the near future.
Well, I mean, I'm all for it. You let me know when you go.
Want to go?
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. That'd be fun. But yeah,
We'll
I
kick off our
think
textbook company on the cruise.
there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
multitask.
books afloat, ink.
Love it.
But I think there's so much to do that we'll make it work. So you we talked about it a little bit, but you really feel that having been in a variety of cities has helped your life perspective.
Definitely. Look, the way that you're just talking about travel, it's the same thing where
Mm-hmm.
I've lived in 4 cities and have traveled to many more, and it shapes you. Certainly, when you make moves, I moved a couple times for work, for example. Um, you are often finding yourself somewhere where you're alone, and you have to build a whole new community and support system. And sometimes that can be very lonely. And as much as I love spending time with myself, or but I think overall it really proves to you that you can be resilient and you can make wonderful things out of situations that you didn't know what would happen, right? So
Yeah.
similar to you not knowing that you would live where you do now,
Yeah.
uh, it's a beautiful testament to what we can do as humans, what we're capable of.
Life's an adventure.
I know, I love that theory.
So, for you, what's been one of your biggest learning lessons over the last year? Since I assume you still believe that you learn all the time.
I learn all the time. And again, I think it really is just going back to the spirituality element, man plans, God laughs.
Yeah.
I definitely have thought that there's a lot in my life that I had the ability to plan out. And even when I think things are going in a certain direction, the universe has this fun way of, establishing a plot twist and seeing how I react to it. So, yeah, maybe it's to not take certain things as seriously and kind of learn to go with the flow a little bit more. That's the biggest lesson there.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's a very
That's
important
a
lesson
big
to
one.
learn.
Yeah. So maybe it's a little bit later in life, but it's never too late for these things.
Never.
What
Well,
would be
what?
one of yours?
Um, well, I think for me, spending more time being introspective is been a great lesson for me, and I've learned um, to step back and again not plan so much. As you said,
Hmm.
man plans, God laughs. I don't
Right.
know that I would say God laughs. God's just patient, and He says, "Go do what you're going to do, and then let me know when you're ready to get real." But
Ah,
but I think there's a lot of truth to that. So for me, I'm just constantly learning to be a little bit more patient.
a good one too.
So, what kind of advice would you give to an up and coming entrepreneur or person about living life?
Ah, just do everything. Do everything that you want to do, really would be because I think that like the more that you try, the more you are learning about what you are capable of and who you are as a person. The more different types of people that you meet, the more opportunities that might come your way. Um, and some of it you're not going to like. That's a learning lesson. And some of it you're going to love. So if there's, eh, so I would say do all of that. And then the other one is make it happen
Yeah,
because nothing will come to you if you are not going after it. And I just said that we have to surrender and let things come to us. But I really believe that there has to be um, not a manifestation, but really just some intention to push us in a certain direction.
yeah,
And that hard work is necessary, and anything that's really good that comes to us in life, anything that's good is going to take work.
The only thing that I would add to that is when you said there are things that might be happening that might happen that you don't like.
Yeah.
My only comment to that would be step back and try to figure out why you don't like them and see if there's really a reason. Because we are such a knee-jerk reaction society. It's always good to analyze and go, what really is the issue here?
Yeah, you're so right.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. This has been absolutely fun. It has now been over an hour, and it's got to be past the beginning of your dinner time.
It's almost past my bedtime on a Friday night. How about
there
that?
You go. Well, I really appreciate you doing this and spending the time with us. And I've learned a lot, and I hope other people have. If people want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Oh, please reach out on LinkedIn. It's just Stephanie Gutnik. You'll find me.
Spell that if you would, just to play safe.
Yes, absolutely. Stephanie. And the last name is Gutnik. Gut as in Tom, and as in Nancy, IK.
So hunt down Stephanie on LinkedIn.
Stephanie doesn't know who Tom or Nancy are, but she just thought that those would be helpful names.
Well, there you go. Well, hey, whatever works.
Yeah, exactly.
There you are.
Michael, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Well, I want to thank all of you for being here with us and hope you've learned some things today and that you've enjoyed it. Wherever you're monitoring our podcast, please give us a 5-star review, but even more, or rating, but more important, give us a great review. Reviews are things that people like to see when they're thinking about what podcast to listen to. So we value your reviews greatly. And if you'd like to reach out to me, it's easy. It's speaker, SPEAKER, at Michael Hingson, MICHAELHINGSON.com. Love to hear from you. If you know anyone who ought to be a guest on the podcast, let us know. Stephanie, you as well, always looking for more people. Absolutely. And so I appreciate you doing that. And with that, Stephanie, once more, thanks for being here. This has been fun.
Thank you so much. I very much agree.
If you're ready to go deeper into the ideas that shape how we see ourselves and others, I have a free gift for you. Head over to michaelhingson.com and download my free ebook, Blinded by Fear. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep choosing to live with an unstoppable mindset.